Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every damn word I have to say!
Welcome to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast, brought to you by Revival Recordings.
Hello, and welcome back to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast, brought to you by Revival Recordings. We're here with episode number 3. We're excited to jump into today's topics and talk about the recent releases of Pierce the Veil and Paramore, and go into a second segment about our favorite albums, songs, and artists. And we also, at the end, would love to hear what your favorites are. So let us know in the comments after. Think about it. It's a very hard decision to make. We had trouble narrowing them down, so we understand if you do too. And we'd love to hear back. So the big news in the scene right now are the recent releases from Friday. And I know we all have thoughts.
We do all have thoughts. We should mention that we're recording this on February 15th, and this album, and this episode's not going to come out for till the 27th. February 27th. Okay.
Monday the 27th.
So Monday the 27th. So we realize that this isn't the most timely topic, but we do want to talk about it because we can't not talk about it. I don't know where to start though.
So. Let's start with Pierce the Veil, because
thanks. I hated it all.
Did you?
Yeah.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
okay.
Get into it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. You go.
Like, I was kind of joking, but also, like, I'm serious. I was not impressed with either of them. Specifically, more so Paramore than Pierce the Veil. I did really like that one that they released prior, like little love song one. That was really good. But then otherwise, I was like, all right, this is just another album. Okay.
Wait, which Pierce the Veil love song? Because I think
they
were all
Even When I'm Not With You.
Even When I'm Not With You. I think that's been on, like, I've played that a lot recently for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I just really like that song, but, like, that's the only one that's really stuck with me. And then that Paramore album's a mess, man.
Oh, I love it.
I am so not impressed with that album. And it's not from a nostalgia factor because, like, I don't care. Like, they can grow their sound and what have you, but it didn't hit for me. And I am so vividly remembering an alternative press article from back in 2007 or 8 when Riot came out that was talking about We Are Broken from the Riot album, and they're like, your arms tower over me, and like they really need to grow their lyrics, and this is really bad. And it was just like this moment of like, oh wait, no, that still sticks. This is not good. These lyrics are not good.
I'm very neutral on this album. Wasn't,
for both of them?
It's just no, for Paramore. Very neutral on the Paramore album. I think we knew we were gonna get a different sound than what we wanted, which, going back to last episode, we talked about how bands have every right to evolve and change and do all that. But it just, it was just meh. It was meh to me. Like,
it was very underwhelming.
Yeah.
What? Okay, like, this is, what is it? This is fun. This is fine. This is what is the one?
This is why.
This is why. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's like the only one that I'm like, all right, let's go. But then,
and it took me a little to get into that song. I think I didn't really get into it until I saw it live when we were young. And then I was like, okay, yeah, we're jamming. But before that, I was kind of like, what is this?
I have very strong opinions about, well, not less strong about Pierce. I enjoyed both. Let's start with that. I liked both, and I think my feelings about both strongly rely on how much I can relate to them and where I am in my own life, which is why, like, I don't totally relate to the Pierce the Veil record, because a lot of those are love songs. Somebody on TikTok said that This Is Why is the record where basically, say you just went through like a major mental health crisis, but you got meds, you went to therapy, you worked on yourself, and you got better, but you kind of missed the chaos. That's what this record is, and I think that makes a lot of sense. This Paramore record definitely went to art school. It sounds like a bunch of musicians from
What an interesting way to put it.
Art school.
Yeah, I wanted to make
That
sure
is
I said that.
That is a good thought. Yeah.
It's what I've been thinking all week. I don't want to compare it directly. There's this band called Parquet Courts. It's definitely nothing like them at all if you regularly listen to Parquet Courts' music, but it's sonically, they do a lot of weird, I don't want to say experimental because realistically it's not that experimental. I just think they did a lot of cool things sonically. I think it's a war crime that Figure 8 wasn't a single, first of all. Anything? Did anybody feel anything about that song?
No.
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from on that.
So
You know
blunt.
what? I mean, like, some albums and artists, like, the single, you can always, some put out the best singles, and then some just, because, like, with Pierce the Veil, I do think the 3 strongest songs are the 3 singles that were put out.
See, I disagree.
But that's not to say I don't like other songs on the album, but those were, like, what brought me in to be like, yeah, I'm going to listen to this ASAP. And then the Paramore, like, they put out, like, the first one, we were, like I said, I was kind of like, eh, and then I didn't care about the other 2 that they put out. Like, you know what I mean?
I don't really care
News?
for, what's the one that's,
News?
they're putting out a music video soon for it, Running Out of Time, I think it's called. I wasn't the biggest fan of that compared to the rest of the album, but something else I noticed, I said this in our group chat on Friday when the albums came out, but I thought it was weird when I was listening through the albums front to back, but both Paramore and Pierce the Veil released singles that are all in order on the album, like the 3 songs in order. And at first I thought it was weird because I feel like with people's attention spans nowadays, if a new album comes out and you already heard those 3 songs, you're probably inclined to skip it to get to the new stuff. So you're skipping like half the record not half the record, if it was an EP maybe, but you're skipping a whole chunk. I don't know. Is that a thing? Do other bands do that a lot? Or is it just something that I haven't thought about until like right this second?
So coming from like the background of like putting the distribution stuff in for like revival bands, like this is obviously on a smaller scale because we're talking about these bands that have, you know, millions of listeners. It doesn't happen a lot. I think a lot of times bands try to pick the singles before they sometimes do the track list, and then when they go back to do the track list, it's just how it falls in the way they want it to come out and the story they're trying to tell within the album. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes people do the track list first and then they're like, these 3 are our strongest, and they just happen to be there together. I don't think it was necessarily intentional. I think really they're trying to pick what they consider their strongest marketable singles.
Right.
And sometimes it falls in line and sometimes it doesn't. But I feel like also, if you think about it, most of the time, I think your singles are closer to the beginning of your album than the end of your album. If you look at it, like a lot of times the first half is where your singles are, and then the second half is all new music. So, I mean, in that sense, you're skipping over some music. Like, I think the Home Team, their singles on their new album, the Slow Bloom, it was like 1, 2, 4, 6, something like that. Like, so it was like the very top half of the album was that, but I don't think it's necessarily.
See, that's something, if you're listening and you're in a band, I would really like to know if that's something that matters to you. If your track listing, say your track listing is done, would you prefer your singles be bunched together like that, or would you rather have it spread out? Or is that something that you wouldn't even think about? Because it's a weird coincidence that both of these records that were such a big deal on Friday did it I don't know. It just kind of bugged me. But my bottom line for both of these is I liked the Pierce the Veil record, but it didn't quite hit the way previous records of theirs did for me. One of them I'm going to mention later in the next segment. The Paramore one, I think it's the logical next step to After Laughter, and I understand why people don't like it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and Figure 8 should have been a single. I am very passionate about that.
Yeah.
I think I should also just mention, just as a point of defending myself, I think I've never truly been like the biggest Paramore fan when it really comes down to it. I remember seeing them at Warped Tour 2007 or 2008, whenever they were just like they were on the tour and they were on one of the smaller stage, and then they had to get promoted onto the bigger stage because their crowds were pulling so many people. Like, that's my memory of them. And I was like, wow, this is really good, and it's a female fronted band. Like, that's fantastic. And then after Brand New Eyes, I kind of just stopped listening. So I think part of that is going to be for me, for any consolation, if it's any consolation.
Yeah,
I haven't been a fan for a long time.
Yeah, I'll say, like, I love Paramore, but I feel like I'm first a Hayley Williams fan. Like, her as a person, and that, you know what I mean? Like, I love Hayley Williams, so then I'm like, okay, Paramore comes with that.
Just to go off of that, though, Paramore could have very well gone the way of Panic at the Disco at several different points in their career.
That's true.
They've had several
kind
lineup
of
changes.
At one point, like, with everyone kind of dipped out for a hot minute. Like,
so it's never been marketed as just Hayley Williams.
No,
throughout
but it
any
has been the
album
Hayley
cycle.
Williams show for a long time.
Right. I could kind of agree with that, but at least I don't know. If I wasn't someone who actively listened to Paramore from the outside, I would have never looked at Paramore and been like, yeah, that's a solo act, you know? Meanwhile, Panic at the Disco, if I didn't know about Panic at the Disco, I would have been like, oh, that's the one guy. Anyway, Hayley, we have not heard your thoughts yet.
So
I just wanted to make sure I said that before.
Yeah, you're good. So I haven't listened to the Pierce the Veil album yet. I truthfully have not listened to a lot of Pierce the Veil in general. Like, I know, like, their big singles and things, but I haven't really listened to a full album of theirs. But I will go listen to it because you said it's about a lot of love songs, and you know me, I'm a basic bitch. Love songs. As far as Paramore goes, I have not listened to it either, but my reasoning behind it was because I did not like the single and the first single. This is why. I didn't like it at all. Like, I actually stopped it halfway through. Like, I didn't finish it.
This is why I don't leave the house. So why?
And for me,
this is why.
And for me, as a casual listener to Paramore, like, I listened to the first couple albums and I kind of stopped after their, like, more pop phase, I guess. So as the casual listener to Paramore, and one that's not, like, super hardcore into them, when I listened to that first single and I didn't like it, it didn't give me any drive to go and listen to the rest of it. And that's kind of how I am in general with a lot of music. Like, I could love a band, but if the singles don't pull me in, I'm not, like, jumping at the bit when the album comes out to listen to it.
Yeah, that's fair. I did kind of feel the same way about both of these albums. I wasn't thrilled about the singles, except Pierce the Veil. I really, really loved Emergency Contact. I don't know what it is about that specific. Honestly, that's the only single across the board of both of these albums that I agree should have been a single. Well, maybe past the Nirvana, that of the rest of the album. What's the one? I think the first track on the Pierce the Veil record,
Death of an Executioner.
Yeah, that one's definitely
that was another one that I really liked.
Yeah.
To go off what Hayley said, because I feel like also I mentioned this in the first episode when we talked about the 3 singles. Like, I've never been a Pierce the Veil girl, not for any particular reason. I just wasn't listening to them, and so maybe that's why I like this album a little more, because I wasn't sitting there like listening to the other ones wholeheartedly like in previous years. So Like I said, like I'm a fan of probably half the songs, and then the other half, I'm not sitting there saying like, oh, they're bad. I listened through the whole album and I'm not skipping them, but there's like
Yeah.
a good amount. Like I love like Death of an Executioner, and then
It's
there was like
interesting. It's interesting you say that because it's actually the fourth most played song off of that album, next to the other three.
yeah, yeah, no,
So
it's good. And it's the first song. It might be because it's the first song though.
yeah, it could be, but also it might be because it's one of the
Yeah.
better songs
Yeah.
off of the album.
I tweeted this the other day. Hire me to pick your band singles because clearly I'm right.
Clearly, she is right, and she knows all.
I have a lot of feelings about Pierce the Veil's discography in general, as someone who was a really avid fan and then a way more casual fan and then an avid fan again, and then they got canceled, and now I don't know how to feel, but that's a whole other subject that we should acknowledge that was a thing, but we don't have to go into the details of it right now. But one of the records that will come up later, I'll expand on this point when we get to the next segment.
Our favorites, yeah. Well, does anybody have any final thoughts? Had very strong opinions. Me and Amanda at least listened to the other two albums, and Haley is just
She's chilling.
I'm at home momming, you know.
For the record,
Good
yeah,
girl.
I was gonna say we should mention that of the four of us, Haley is the only parent, and she gets a pass for not having listened to the two records.
yeah.
Thank you. I will not use it as an excuse, but I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Yeah. So, I mean, neither of these albums will fall on E's top favorites of all time,
No.
as we just discussed. But we want to go into our top favorite songs, albums, and artists of all time, not just right now.
So
It hurt my soul.
off the
I don't
top,
like it.
before we even get into it, when I say all time, this is a very soft all time because, as I said in our group chat earlier, ADHD makes all time change all the time.
All the time.
And I mean, music's always coming out, so like,
Yeah.
you know, our next great favorite album could come out next month, next year. You know, we could discover a new album we've never listened to, and it could become our favorite. We don't know.
And I don't know about you guys, but I tried to make my favorite bands, favorite albums, and favorite songs very different from each other. I didn't want to pick one band's album, one band as my,
Yeah.
there's a huge difference between your favorite all-time artist, your favorite all-time songs, and your favorite all-time records.
So
A lot of disclaimers.
So I mean, we came up with this topic because as people who work in music and are avid music fans, I feel like the most question you get when you're talking about music to someone, or like, oh, this is what I do for a job, they say, well, who's your favorite musicians? What do you listen to? And it's hard, some people do just stay within a genre and that's who they listen to and that's prominent. And then you have people like, me and Haley who go across like many different thresholds of music. And so whenever I get that question, I'm like, can you narrow it down to a genre or a decade or like give me something more to go on? So it is difficult to go your all time. I originally said, let's do 5. And then you guys said 3, which stressed me out.
Girl, you know how we talk. We can't do more than 3.
That was my time management. I was like, guys.
Okay. So we're gonna round table. We'll start with songs. We'll start and then go into albums and artists. And this came up because we kind of had the discussion that all of those don't have to overlap because my all-time favorite songs aren't necessarily by my all-time favorite artist, and they might not be on my favorite albums. And there's a lot of different meanings to those. So we'll each go list our songs and then we can discuss from there. So I have 5. I have Lightning Crashes by Live. I have You Know You're Right by Nirvana. I have Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. I have Let Her Cry by Hootie and the Blowfish, and Slow Dancing in a Burning Room by John Mayer. Those are my top
Wow.
5 songs of all time.
I almost every time I hear the phrase "Hootie and the Blowfish," I giggle, just because nothing against the band, or I've literally no thoughts on the band. It's just a funny word, Hootie. It's funny.
Hoot. Yeah.
Not what I expected, Courtney.
Yeah, no, not what I expected either.
Really?
Would not expect the Swiftie to have a John Mayer song.
Well,
That's a hot take.
yeah, that is a hot take. And you're gonna say you don't have Taylor Swift on your favorite songs. As a Swiftie, it is impossible after 10 albums to pick one single song. Okay. No, I'm just saying, like, to pick one song, it's not like it always changes when it comes to her. So we'll get into her later. But yes, so those are my top 5 favorite songs of all time. Does anybody enjoy those songs? Know those songs?
No, but it's kind of nice to hear quote unquote classic rock coming from someone, you know? Like it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, I kind of have, they're not even all personal reasons. Like Lightning Crashes by Live, I just think is a great song. And for some reason, every time it comes on, I'm just like in the moment. I'm like, yes, this, like, just feel it. Like late at night when you're driving, put that song on by yourself. And it's just,
Would you
puts
say
in a
that's
moment.
would you say that's your tunnel song?
Yes, that would be a tunnel song. Yes.
That's nice.
You Know You're Right by Nirvana. It's the last song that they ever recorded. So I think that's, and it is my favorite Nirvana song. And it didn't come out until 2002, when it was actually released. And it did, there were leaks of it, and there was a lot of legal stuff with Courtney Love to not have it released and wanted it released sooner and things like that. But it is the last single ever credited to the band too, so I think that kind of puts that a little meaning behind that. And then you get songs that are have a little more personal meaning, like Wish You Were Here. I think I had tweeted from the Revival accounts the other week, like, music your parents introduced you to is like gonna stay with you. And I asked people, like, what bands. So Pink Floyd is like, I always think of my dad, jam into that. And I think when you think of Pink Floyd, it's the saddest song they ever made, and it's arguably one of the saddest songs of all time.
I liked Pink Floyd. I think their most popular one is Brick in the Wall, right?
Yeah. So I mean, Wish You Were Here came out after, the success of Dark Side of the Moon, which is, again, arguably one of the top rock albums of all time. And that's not even just my opinion. That's, on the list. And it was one of the albums that defined that decade. But Syd Barrett wasn't on. He was the singer. And Wish You Were Here is basically an ode to him because he was no longer in the band when Wish You Were Here, the album, was made. So I think, there's a little history behind it, and then you have the personal aspect of just kind of jamming, my dad jamming,
I get that.
Led Zeppelin.
All of those bands that you mentioned outside of John Mayer, I probably know because of my dad.
Yeah,
he's the one that kind of introduced me into rock in general. Like, my mom was listening to like country and the Eagles. She likes the Eagles. So that I've introduced like that to those bands. So I get it. I see. I understand.
Yeah. And then if we go into Let Her Cry, Hootie and the Blowfish, which, if you asked me, and the list was a little longer, She Talks to Angels would be on there from Black Crowes, and Darius Rucker actually heard that song and was inspired to write Let Her Cry. So you can see the similarities between those two songs, but I do like this one a little more than that one. And then Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. I don't know. It's like obviously about a breakup, but I so much see it as a love song. Like, that's a hot take because nobody else is going to agree with that. But, and I don't know. And if you go watch the video of John Mayer playing that live, sorry, that's probably one of the top performances to go. Him playing the guitar in that live is crazy. So, yeah. So those are my top 5 favorite songs of all time.
Man, the longer I look at my list,
Nice.
the more I'm like, these are not of all time. I was just thinking about songs. So I was saying this earlier before we were recording, but I define favorite songs as songs that you're sad when they're over and you just want them to be longer. And I think my list kind of reflects, honestly, I was kind of just spitballing with my list, but since I'm the one talking, I can go into the ones that I have.
Yeah.
But I think that's fair to say though. Like, you know, like all these songs that I listed, I just think like go a huge decade span and stuff. But like saying like you're sad when they end, like that's valid. Like that's an important thing. Like that would make anybody love a song when you're like, oh, I need to replay it 20 more times right now.
Yeah. So I was also going off of my Spotify stats for a lot of these things, which truthfully, you know, doing A&R and working in a coffee shop where you have control of the speaker system, it's not the most accurate to your actual taste, but I'm not going to talk about all of these, but 2 I wanted to mention because they came up in my Spotify, they came up in my Spotify stats a lot, and they're revival bands, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. Right Through Me by the Home Team and Dirty Talk by Nicholas Rage, have been at the top of all of my on repeat playlists since I first heard the songs because they're just so dang catchy that I could listen to both of those songs over and over and over again for the rest of my life, and I'd probably be fine with it.
Which side note, really quick, if anybody's tuning in and doesn't listen to revival bands, go check them out. We have great music from bands that maybe you haven't heard of, are a little smaller, but like we're putting out jams, guys. We're putting out jams, and our bands kill it. So go check them out.
I will say, if you're listening and you don't listen to revival bands, how did you get here? Why are you here?
Good
What are you doing?
Who are you? But other examples for me of songs that you're sad when they're over are Given Up by Emarosa, which I don't know if that iteration of the band had any canceled people in it, and if they do, I'm sorry. But that's just a really good song. Letter from Janelle by Chiodos.
Oh, that's so good.
That's Bone Palace Ballet is an honorable mention in my albums. I'll get to that later. I also have a personal anecdote about that album that we can get to later. Lady Lie by Rainbow Kitten Surprise. A lot of Rainbow Kitten Surprise songs, I'm sad when they're over. I'm sad while they're playing, for sure. But sad when they're over. I slept on Rainbow Kitten Surprise for so long, and everything they do is so good.
Listening to them is like going to therapy, but for free.
Yeah, except in the sense that, like, I'm crying and I don't feel any better.
That's a valid point. That is a valid point.
And I guess I am going to mention all these songs, but one more that I just have to mention is a song called Madhouse by a band called World Divided. Which if you follow me, you've heard of this band. I found them last year and they quickly became one of my favorites. It's, at least the last time I talked to him, it was one dude. He might have gotten band members by now. His name's Daniel. He's really nice, and his music's really sick, and he's super talented. But those are my favorite songs that I wrote down. Maybe not of all time, but definitely in recent memory. So
yeah, no, World Divided, definitely, because Amanda kind of introduced us, and definitely great music going on over there. So,
and it's one dude.
Yeah.
It's one dude doing all of that stuff. It's insane.
All right. Who wants to go? E or Haley?
I'll go. But
Let's get some show tunes in there, Haley.
No, I didn't put any show tunes in here.
The Wicked
but
soundtrack.
I do love the Hamilton soundtrack, but no, I did not put anything in there. I would like to, before I start, say that for me, and I was talking to you guys about it before we were recording, that to me, I don't like putting a favorite in front of a song. I change my mind constantly on things, and when it comes to music, it's just hard for me to nail down a favorite anything. And I don't know if that's just me or if it's just, I could listen to everything and people could tell me it's my favorite and I would be like, are you sure? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are like that, and then there's people like me that are like, no, these are my definitive 5, and if you ask me, I have them off the top of my head.
I would not. Like you're like I said, you're lucky that I came up with some, because like I was struggling. I was like, I don't know what to do here. But so when I go into these songs, they're just the songs that I'm belting to in the car or give me feelings when I listen to them. So the songs I have, and then they're in no particular order, would be Life Cycles by The Word Alive, Hero by Foo Fighters, What It Is to Burn by Finch, and It's Been a While by Stained.
Nice.
Those are probably my 5 or 4 that I have on the list for tonight, at least. Yeah.
Seeing Dave Grohl sing Hero live is like an out of body experience. Like it's just like, it's so like it's a great freaking song, and you're just, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Thinking about Foo Fighters right now makes me too sad still, with Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah. Those are all good ones, and you're a big Finch fan, so.
Yeah, I didn't get into Finch really. Yeah, I really didn't get into Finch until I was dating Andrew. Yeah. But Stained, It's Been a While, it's one of those songs that I listened to with my dad, and it was just, I've seen them play live, and it just takes you somewhere, for me at least. It just takes you somewhere for it. And then Life Cycles, I like, it was the first song I knew by The Word Alive, which may be weird because they've been putting out music for a while prior, but it also, I like the meaning behind the song. So the lyrics hit me on that one. So that's why I put that one on there.
Yeah, it's like interesting because like depending, like your favorites could be just because they remind you of like a certain moment or a person, or it could just be lyrically, or it could just be like, I like jamming to this. Like I like shaking my ass to this song.
I'm definitely more of the latter, for sure. I'm definitely more of a jammer, maybe not an ass shaker, but I sentimental things tend to make me a little bit uncomfortable, so I'm definitely like the total opposite of that. I'm like, this feels good right now, dopamine, go. So
all right.
So I think the first thing you have to understand about me is that I am a very old soul, and I don't mean that in like a I'm really weird type of way, although like that's true, but like I really connect with old music, specifically from like the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Oh wow.
So my favorite song of all time, hands down 1000%, is Moonlight Serenade by Glenn Miller. My favorite. It's all instrumental. It's beautiful. I love it so much. And then it's closely followed by Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis.
Oh, see, I'm also a huge Elvis fan because my grandmother, I was supposed to be born on January 8th, which is Elvis's birthday, and it's my grandma's birthday. I came a couple days early. I'm the 5th, but so like she's always loved Elvis because they have the same birthday. So Elvis is one of those things. The same.
Yeah,
like, it's just.
And then kind of then it comes forward. Then it comes really forward, and so it's I have them written down. It's Chemicals by Armor for Sleep, followed closely by All the Same by Sick Puppies. And
Oh.
then
I forgot
Thrash
that
and
one. That was a good
Real,
one.
Yeah, I haven't
Thrash
thought
and
about that band in a
Real
while.
by Against Me is also
Yeah.
I think I listened to that song 8 times on my birthday last year. Like it just, and every year it gets more and more real to me, and every year I like cannot listen to it as much because I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna cry if I keep listening to this song.
Against
So-
Me has some jams.
They do, for sure. But it's also just interesting because you take, those 5 songs and you put them against my favorite artists and my favorite albums, and they are so removed from them. So those are my favorites.
You said It's All the Same by Sick Puppies, and I'm immediately was like, oh, I gotta go listen to that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to go listen to that later.
I haven't thought of Sick Puppies in like freaking years.
I know. So good. That song was so good.
Do y'all remember when that music video would be played like every 15 minutes on Fuse?
Yes.
I feel like it was like a good mix of songs going on between us guys.
Yeah, I
Unexpected
was surprised.
songs.
Very
Yeah.
unexpected. I mean, some expected, like Armor for Sleep and stuff, but
Yeah.
when we're talking about scene and like, I feel like there was like it was like years ago now, but I was listening to the radio in the car, and the host like did a segment where they just like talked about a song, like how we do at the end of this, like that they're listening to or into during that week. And the hosts are like, just because we're on the top 40 radio doesn't mean that's all we listen to, like, and because people would be like, these aren't pop songs, these aren't blah, blah, blah. And they're like, just because that's not all we listen to. So it's like, just because we're a scene podcast.
I think I've read into that a lot too, because I remember during the pandemic, The Weeknd came out with a new album, and I was so obsessed with that album. And I would post about it all the time, and people would just be like, that's unrelated.
That's not emo.
That's so off-brand for you. What do you mean you like The Weeknd? And I was just like,
Hey,
am I not allowed to like other genres? Because I think the second most played genre for me is actually country. So
Yeah.
like,
Good music is good music, people.
Yeah.
just
it's true.
side note, speaking of songs that I'm sad they're over, Blinding Light or Blinding Lights, that song from that album.
Oh, I'm blinded by the light.
Oh, man.
5,000%. 5,000% one of those songs for me. I love that song. That is a perfect song.
All right, so those are some of our favorite songs of all time, or of the moment, at least. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're on our favorite albums of all time. And this is another list that I particularly have had in my head going for a couple years now, and they're very definitive, haven't really changed. So I mean, I can talk about them. I can start off again because maybe we'll get some surprises again.
Go for it.
So, Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park. That is one
Okay.
that starting an album with paper cut. No, like
Quintessential album.
I mean, the album's gone 12 times platinum, so that speaks for itself. I mean, you look at the singles, Crawling, in the end, and then you look at the rest of the album that has like My December and Points of Authority, and it's just like the whole album. And to sit there as a band and that's your debut album, amazing. I would literally fight someone if they tried to argue that is not hands down a great album. Sorry.
I'm not going to disagree with
anybody
you,
else
but
anybody else has an opinion on on it.
I don't have a strong opinion about any Linkin Park music, honestly. I totally skipped that phase myself.
See,
I actually have Linkin Park on my top albums as well, but it's not Hybrid
Ew.
Theory. I did the next one.
Reimagine?
I don't even know how to pronounce. No, I don't even remember how to pronounce it. It's like Meteora,
Oh,
or it has like Somewhere I Belong and Easier to Run and all this.
Yeah.
I have that one on mine.
yeah.
So I'm there with you on Linkin Park.
Yeah, that's a good one
Well,
too.
They were great live.
See, so I never saw them live. I went to the Chester Bennington Memorial concert, but See, this is why I'm a big like spend the money on tickets girl, even though tickets are outrageous now and nobody can afford them another time. But I'm like, go see your favorite bands live. You never know.
They were great.
But yeah.
It's true.
My second album is 16 Stone by Bush. And I will preface this by saying I saw them live last night. Wasn't exactly among my demographic age-wise, but that was also another debut album by a band. And I just can listen to it all the way through. Love it. Have loved it since like high school when I first started listening to them. Obviously, I mean, the album came out in 94, so I was only one, but I started listening to them in high school, and that album in particular, I mean, it's just great. Like, and I mean, that's another that you can argue is one of the, or not argue, but it's probably on a list somewhere to be on top rock.
It's on someone's list.
And then
Nice.
we can go back into the scene, because From Under a Cork Tree is up there. I mean, I'm a Fall Out Boy stan no matter what, but that album is, I think a lot of people our age could also say that album is one of the defining ones that got you into the music that we listen to today.
Oh, so it's not going to be one of the albums that I talk about in my list, but 100% that's a formative album for me. The lyrics on that album, are you kidding me? Wear me like a locket around your throat, I'll weigh you down, I'll watch you choke. You look so good in blue. Yeah. Really?
It's like, and our little middle school hearts were singing every word, okay? Every word. And it was amazing. And it's such a defining album for this genre.
Can I just argue that Panic at the Disco's A Fever You Can't Sweat Out is just as lyrically influential?
Yes, but also didn't Pete Wentz produce that record?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Same guy.
Yeah.
At least I think. Did he actually? Let me make sure that he did before we put that in there. I want to make sure.
The scene has to thank Pete Wentz for his,
Where would we be without
Pete Wentz today?
Where would we be without Pete Wentz? Have you thanked Pete Wentz today? We need to know.
Well, so the producer is not Pete Wentz. The producer is Matt Squire, at least according to who. Looking at Wikipedia, he's worked on a lot of scene stuff, actually, so I don't want to discredit him. But I know Pete Wentz had a lot to do with Panic at the Disco's formative years. Yes. So still, have you thanked or cursed Pete Wentz today? Have you thought about that today?
I think we need to wake up every morning and thank Pete Wentz. It's going to become my new morning ritual.
I just keep thinking about how I would tower over him if I ever met him. It would be... I would be like, hello!
If anybody wants to know, E stands tall at 6 feet.
You do.
Tall queen.
Nice.
Yeah. And then keeping up with the scene, that's The Spirit, Bring Me the Horizon.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
That's your favorite one of theirs?
Yes. I know. But... I'm not
no judgment.
No, but to preface
I'm judging.
Everybody on this call knows that I'm not super hardcore.
Right.
Into all the, you don't
like the screaming.
The music. Not
or the
screaming.
Unclean vocals.
And so what got me into Bring Me the Horizon was this album, and now I listen to previous ones and am into it, but this was what got me into Bring Me the Horizon, and made me a stan. But yeah, and it has.
We could go into Bring Me the Horizon, but
yeah, it has follow you on it. We know I'm a follow you stan.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're right.
My last one. We have to do it to you guys. T Swift. And my favorite T Swift record is Red. the deluxe version, the Taylor version, every version that will ever be made till the end of time. And every Swiftie has their own opinion, but Red is the best record Taylor Swift has ever put out.
I would say
He's like, no.
Wait. Are you making that face because you don't agree with her being on the top, or do you think you just don't know anything? You just don't like Taylor Swift in general?
No, I mean, I know my fair share about Taylor Swift. I might not admit that publicly, but, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, there's so much to go into each album, especially when you are the type of fan I am, but that personally is my favorite Taylor Swift album. And so those are my top 5 albums of all time. And we can go right over back to Amanda. You want to go second again?
I had a lot of trouble with this because I was, again, going at this from a perspective of, okay, a favorite album would be a No Skips album. And there's a lot of No Skips albums for me. I think this might be a deep cut for some people, but I wanted to mention Almost Here from the Academy is No Skips. No Skips.
Oh, God.
That's a good, like, spring into summer album. That's a good Windows Down album. That's a good Yelling album. That they are one of those bands that I didn't realize was so formative to me at the time, but looking back, I was like, yeah, I really love all those songs. Going off of that, honorable mention to the first Cobra Starship record when they were still kind of a pop punk band. But that, again, honorable mention, not in the top. I have to mention Misadventures by Pierce the Veil. I feel like because of the time it came out in proximity to the controversies that they had, I feel like it was kind of slept on. Again, not that we should ignore controversies, but it is a really good album. I do not skip any of those songs. But I kept saying I didn't want to talk about the same 3 bands over and over again, but here I am talking about the same 3 bands over and over again.
Sometimes it happens.
Sometimes I like bad music. That was 2, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Another no skips for me is The Greatest Generation by the Wonder Years. Full disclosure, they are going to be one of my favorite bands that I'm going to mention later, but the Wonder Years has a record for every phase of life, I think. The band members are a little bit older than me, maybe not a full generation ahead of me, but far enough away from my age to where they're in a different phase of life. So every time they come out with a record, I'm like, oh, that's what's coming. That's what I'm going to feel. Fix Me by Marianas Trench. Their first record. Yeah. One of those, this is your first record, how dare you things. Really just catchy the entire time, no skips.
I love Marianas Trench.
They're so good.
They're so good.
And
yeah.
They're simultaneously like one of the more famous bands, but since they're not in the US, they don't really tour the US that much. So I saw them from like 4 football fields away once at Bamboozle when I was like 13 or 14, but that was it. I haven't seen them live since. And
oh my God, which Bamboozle were you at? Jesus Christ. I swear, like
we were definitely at the same few. I went from
blows my mind that the world is that small.
I went from like 2010 on until it ended.
Yep.
You know what? One that I actually didn't write down, I gotta say, Pinkerton from Weezer is a pretty freaking great record. It's kind of dark and incel-y, but if you ignore that, it's just catchy, good music, and it's very different from everything else Weezer proceeded to do. I have listened to that album on repeat for multiple days at a time. Just very angsty and very good. So that's it. Washing my hands of it. I said it all, and now it's out there. Those are my 5 albums.
I'll say it again. Weezer slaps.
Weezer slaps.
See, it's like hard. For me, it wasn't as hard. Like, I'm just like very definitive in like those things.
Are you definitive like that in other things? in life?
No.
Well-
my anxiety could never.
See, my initial
What?
thought was to just go by the albums that I have on vinyl. And the three that I didn't mention that I really wanted to mention were After Laughter, Bullets from My Chem, and Black Lines for Mayday Parade, which I'm sure will all come up in later episodes. But those are all also very important records to me. Important enough to at least have physical copies. So
We'll go over to E or Haley. Who's up?
Well, I guess I'll do it since we are going in. I was
Same
third
order.
last time. I'll do same order. So we already mentioned the Linkin Park album, so I won't reiterate that one. But Homesick by A Day to Remember. There's some really good ones on there, and there's some really good songs on there. It's harder for me, like Amanda was saying, it's hard for me to pick a favorite album because a lot of times I find there's at least one song that I'd skip on every single album that I listen to probably. So I can't go with the same no skip. But so yes, Homesick, A Day to Remember. I would say Age of Ignorance by Our Last Night. That was the first one I've heard of theirs and kind of listened to them from then on. And then I would say The Revelation by Cold Rain. They are a Japanese band.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're really good. I've seen them live once too. They don't tour often in the US, but I did see them live once, and that album was really good for it being the first album that I heard of them. I don't know if it might even be their first album. Don't quote me on that, but it's really good. I would recommend listening to it if you haven't heard it before.
Is it like K-pop-ish?
No,
I mean, obviously
No, it's
not
like-
K-pop, but of that.
No, it's your normal like clean, unclean vocals, metalcore
Oh,
type
interesting.
sound.
I love doing things
Yeah.
like this, or like when we do our end of the
It's really good.
year
I'll send you
playlist for Revival. The whole team does them, and
You can let me know
just
if you hate
seeing,
it.
just seeing what everybody like the different things or like bands maybe you haven't heard of, and it's like cool. All right, E.
They've been on mine.
Okay, so
Any controversial ones on that? Okay.
I don't think so. No, they were all pretty
Okay.
straightforward and came to me pretty quick.
Easily.
The first one was 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance.
Yeah,
I don't think that
obviously.
album has any skips for me. I think it's one of the greatest albums made. It's lyrically great, musically great. I mean, like it hits all the boxes, and that's what's important. And if I could listen to that album for the first time over again, I would, and just enjoy it the same way because it's just I love that album so much. And then I had Zaba by Glass Animals. I was huge into Glass Animals before they blew up on TikTok, and I remember seeing them in like 2016 or 2017 when they came to the US, and it's one of the best shows I've ever been to. They are so good live, and so was just amazed. And that album, I can listen through that album back to front same way that I do 3 Cheers. Then the next one was Transatlanticism by Death Cab for Cutie, which they're having our anniversary tour coming up in September for that, which is so exciting.
I forgot to mention any Postal Service songs. That's a great record. That
also
Postal Service record.
Yeah. And then after that, I did Ascend by Millennium, and that's kind of what
You're
EDM.
Millennium.
Yeah, I'm a huge Millennial, so I mean, anything Millennium does, I'm like, yes, this sounds so good. But I mean, EDM Twitter, the EDM community in general would cancel me for saying that, so whatever. And then the surprising one that I am going to add as my fifth was When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish. Also think that has no skips on it.
Yep.
Oh, this whole time I've been telling myself I wanted to bring this album up, but oops, I did it again. Britney Spears.
Britney Spears? Oh, girl.
No skips. No skips.
Oh, man. I would not have imagined that from you, Amanda. Tore through a house.
Dude,
I love early 2000s pop music.
can we
It's
talk
so
about,
good.
yeah, so I think a better crossover, like when if anything does crossover, would be like artist and albums, like kind of some of those might be the same. Because I know like I hate getting asked the question like who's your favorite artist of all time, or like who's your favorite artist. I feel so basic being like Taylor Swift, Nirvana. Like it sounds so basic, but it's like it's true. Like,
do you know what it's like to tell people your favorite band is Weezer?
yeah,
That's tough. That's a tough.
I'm already generally unpleasant, so I'm just stacking negatives on top of each other.
We all have our faults, Amanda. Okay. But yeah, so I would say like my top artist crossover into the actually there's only one that doesn't cross over into the other previous list. So obviously Taylor Swift is on my top 5 artists. Yes, I'm not ashamed to say it. Okay, guys? Little people might hate, especially at our scene. But and you know what, I will preface this by saying I will never sit there and argue that Taylor Swift is the greatest vocalist of like our generation or like anything like that. There's a lot of Swifties that will like die hard. I've seen Taylor in concert multiple times. She's amazing. I will argue that she is one of the best songwriters like of our generation. And I stand by that, especially in the genre she's in.
She knows how to make a banger.
She does. I think especially when you know like the background of the music of what's like what she's writing about. And you know, like I said, vocally, I mean, I think she's amazing live, but if you put her up against, there are especially pop female artists, there are a lot that are just vocally stronger and will be. Like nobody has pipes like Demi Lovato, like, you know what I mean? When you're sitting there like arguing musically, you know, like Kelly Clarkson, like you have all these like pop female artists that can hit notes higher and belt it out, but I think lyrically, she's a genius.
I think she has a lot of good songs that have good lyrics, but I mean, I think every artist probably has a song that you're like, these lyrics, what are you doing with this song?
And then Bring Me the Horizon and Fall Out Boy and Nirvana all go across what I've already said. I mean, obviously,
Classics.
Nirvana is
classic.
explainable.
Right.
You know,
I've actually never really listened to Nirvana, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like back when I nannied, Nirvana was on the radio, and one of the boys said like this is bad. This is like this sounds bad. They're like, you know, young, and I'm like, I go, well, it's one of the greatest rock songs of all time. It's like Smells Like Teen Spirit is freaking playing on the radio, like, and he's like, yeah, but it sounds bad, and I go, and he goes, who said? And I go, literally every music critic ever. Like, don't argue with me. I'm sitting there getting in a fight with him, and I'm like, no, it is like unanimously. Like, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Fighting with a 12-year-old, but I mean, it's all in the listener. Just because he doesn't like it, you know, doesn't mean that it's not generally like consensus-wise good. And just because you don't like Taylor Swift doesn't mean the consensus says she's bad. Okay. And
we didn't say anything.
I will say, and then like one of my favorite, because I only had like 4 of all time. One of my favorite like current like that I love going to shows is Grayscale. That's like in the past few years, Grayscale has like been one of my, and love going to see them, and so
eclectic.
How about you, Thrill House?
So most of mine are crossovers. I've got technically 6, but I said before we started recording, or maybe it was when we were recording, but in a spot where it wouldn't make sense for me to leave it in. I can't mention my favorite artists of all time without mentioning Alisana, as cringy as it is, because I work for them now. When I was in high school, they were like the be all end all for me, and clearly they shaped a lot of my career path. So that being said, I'm kind of taking them out of the equation and not counting them in this.
I think you can count them.
I mean, I'm counting them, but also
you have others
lightly, because like I'm, those are my family now, so it's a very different vibe now. But other than that, the Wonder Years, like I said, they got an album for every phase of life. My Chemical Romance, because if you listen to the other 2 episodes, I am a My Chemical Romance lady. Girly. I meant to say girly. I don't know why I said lady.
You and E with My Chem is like me with Fall Out Boy, so we understand.
Well,
I understand.
And just to knock them all out, Weezer, Fall Out Boy, and Paramore are the especially going on.
Oh, you got
Spotify
like the Holy
stats.
Trinity on there.
Is that the Holy Trinity?
That
Weezer,
is the
Fall
Holy
Out Boy,
Trinity.
and Paramore.
No. It was more Fall Out Boy, Paramore, My Chem, but I mean... You're
right. That's not what I meant.
Amanda just wanted you to give her throw her one freaking bone with Weezer, okay? And you're like, no. I'm making that a gift.
Oh, man. Anyway, those are my bands that we already talked about at length, so.
For me, it's just so hard. I don't want to be this person, but I don't know that I can.
He doesn't like favorites.
Full art. I can't give you my top artists because I don't know them. I mean, I can tell you, I listen to, like I would say Stained, who we've talked about. I've listened to their album a couple of times. We have like the newer things like A Day to Remember, and you have I like State Champs. Their new album that came out last year was really good. But I mean, you could say Pearl Jam, again with the grunge kind of aspect with Nirvana. But it's hard. I don't know that I can say definitively this is my favorite artist. I don't know if I can.
Yeah. It's hard, and it does change. I mean, as bands come up and like things change, and there's definitely like who you listen to a lot at that moment. That's like how I am with Grayscale. Like the past two years, like very on a Grayscale binge. But yeah, I mean, and then you have artists that like just have been around for decades and decades, and just will stay regardless. One of your top.
Mariana Trench. I'll say they're up there for me. Every album they've put out has been great. They're very a concept type band. So all of their albums have a story, and they're all good. Like I don't think there's an album that I didn't like that they've put out. So they're up there for me. Not favorite, but up there for sure.
Another honorable mention album, Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah.
Banger after banger after banger.
That one was good too. All right, E, bring it home.
Bring us home, E.
Bring us home.
Okay, so my favorite artists, where it felt like they were straightforward, but I also had to kind of like take a second and think about it. Obviously, My Chemical Romance is up there. I admittedly wrote them off at one point around Danger Days, which we have talked about before, but I think when it really comes down to it, they're still going to be my favorite, and they're going to produce music for as long as I live, and I'm going to listen to all of it and be happy about it. And then that is followed closely by Millennium, obviously, because I'm an Millennium girly.
The emo to EDM pipeline right there.
No, but like really though, and especially because Millennium does do a lot of crossovers with people in the scene, so it does kind of make sense in a way. And then I have Queen, because I love Queen.
Ooh,
yeah,
good one.
Yeah,
Queen is a good one.
I saw them live on their last tour, and it was like the best experience
Nice.
ever.
Wow.
Then Death Cab for Cutie, because I am a sad person at heart, and I love my sad music. And then Lord Huron, which is
Mhm.
an indie artist, sort
Yeah.
of, I guess. I don't know how I would really explain that genre,
Yeah.
but that for me was prior to them being on
13
oh my
Reasons
God.
Why.
Yeah, that was prior to 13 Reasons Why. I have always really loved their sound, regardless of how much it doesn't really fluctuate that much. But I have had the most cathartic experiences seeing them live. And just like, I have never really genuinely cried at a concert until I saw them at Bonnaroo this past year. And it was amazing. So those were mine. I guess I'll give an honorable mention to Elvis and Glenn Miller as well, because they are my favorites. They're just, not
Yeah.
as
It's probably the first time
relevant.
Elvis has ever gotten an honorable mention.
So yeah, I mean, we just rambled on yet again for another week.
A long time.
A long
A long
time.
Long
ramble.
But, and I mean, we want to know what your tunnel song is. We want to know your no skip albums. We want to know if you're judging any of our favorites.
Oh no, they definitely are.
I'm sure this episode, it was a little slower paced, but I feel like you get to know us a little more when we do things like this, because I mean, even we ourselves were shocked by some of the other picks, and it's always cool to see. I'm always interested just in like conversations like this. Like I love them. So
And I think the more episodes we're doing, the more we're kind of getting our footing and more of a format going. And we have some set topics moving forward that I'm excited to get into.
yeah.
So yeah, this was good. I'm proud of us. On that note, we should
What's
do...
your favorite song of the week?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll go first for this one. I wanted
Go for
to give... It's a revival song. Embraced by Nicholas Rage. 1, because it's been stuck in my head, and 2, because Jeremy's been posting music clips on like TikTok and Instagram for the first time in a while. At least he did a couple weeks ago. I don't know how recent it was. But yeah, shout out Jeremy. It looks like you're working hard and this music sounds good, and I'm excited to see what it turns into.
Yeah, and if nobody's checked out their EP Personal Party, you should, because
dude, I have to say,
Jam's on there.
I know it sounds biased as hell because we all work for Revival, but Nicholas Rage was brought up to us way before they ever actually signed on. So I started listening to them way before they signed on to being a Revival band, and they very quickly became one of my favorite artists. So I am a genuine, not that I'm not a genuine fan of all of our bands, but that was one that I latched onto very early. So shout out Nicholas Rage.
Yes, shout out. All right, Haley.
Yeah, sure. So my song of the week, it's gonna be "The Only Thing You Talk About" by Drugs, or "Destroy, Rebuild Until God Shows."
So good.
It's gonna be my song. I yell that in the car constantly.
Love it.
And as soon as I left, did she go fuck someone else?
All right, E.
I'm still on the Sleep Token train. I was going to mention them as we were going through favorite artists because they have quickly become one of my most played artists this past month. So I was talking to Courtney about this actually a few days ago, but they recently, or not recently, I actually don't know when this was, I don't know when this was done. But the point is,
Check it.
yeah, they did a cover of Billie Eilish's When the Party's Over. That is so good and just so jarring and raw, and I just sobbed the first time I heard it. So that's mine.
Nice. I like it. I'll have to go listen. I love a good cover. Covers can be so good.
Yeah. I have a whole playlist if you want covers from the scene.
We can share that on our socials too, so other people can see too. And I will go because I was talking about this because I like to mix it up and not have just all, mix up the music a little. Mountain with a View by Kelsey Ballerini. So she just dropped an EP right now it would be yesterday. You guys will hear this in like a week and a half, but called Rolling Up the Welcome Mat, and arguably like so far, I mean, it's only February, but I think this is gonna be some of my favorite music of the year. So
That's good.
Just 6 songs, but it's really good. So and I mean, she's not like, she's country, quote unquote, but little on the line. So people that aren't into country, don't worry, Kelsey won't scare you, and you don't need to do a hoedown throwdown with her.
Hoedown throwdown. Oh Lord.
And now we have a very special guest with us. It's Luanne.
Luanne, tell the people your favorite song.
Meow Mix.
I think the meow meow, the jingle.
She does
jingle.
She does seem partial to After Laughter based off of her reaction to the music I play. So,
well, thank you for tuning in for another week. Hopefully, the episode after this will be all set to have our first guests.
You take some guesses as to what it's about, considering the month it will be coming out and the time of year and a specific event that happens in that month.
Yeah.
Think about it.
We're all gonna get drunk.
St. Patrick's Day.
That wasn't it, but actually, St. Patrick's Day, there's a reviving Raleigh.
There is.
There's a reviving Raleigh. So we'll share the link to tickets to that too, if anybody's in the area down in Raleigh and wants to go check it out.
Poorhouse.
Yeah. So
we'll all be there, except for Courtney.
Yeah, sorry. You can fly me down. But yeah, so thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast. New episodes are released every other Monday.